Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. In 2005, the Supreme Court of the United States heard arguments for Kelo versus New London. The case concerned the town of New London and an economic development project, kind of an economic development project, that destroyed the homes of many residents. The film Little Pink House tells the story of those residents and their fight to save their homes. Let's take a look at the trailer.
I heard somebody finally bought this place.
Suzette Kelo.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you. I feel happy here. I feel like I'm home.
I love you.
Mr. Governor.
We take this plot of land and we redevelop it. Lure a world-class company.
The state of Connecticut will make sure that you succeed.
Guess who's coming to town? Pfizer.
The best course for us would be to acquire all the homes.
The Constitution in the Fifth Amendment, it's eminent domain. They can take your home, they can take your land. It's perfectly legal.
I need to talk to the mayor, please. Regarding? It's regarding the people who are trying to steal my house.
Do we need to be concerned?
What brings you to New London? With the Institute for Justice? Are you here to help the Fort Trumbull folks?
We're gonna take your case. We need to take these people on.
If I haven't left some blood on the battlefield, I haven't done enough.
This is somebody's home!
They did it to intimidate Suzette, to let her know she's next.
If you even try to take my property away from me, the whole world is going to hear about it.
The U.S. Supreme Court has agreed to hear your case.
Oh, my God.
The city's lawyers should hang their heads in shame at what they're doing to their citizens and to the Constitution of the United States.
What you're doing is right. What they're doing, it's wrong.
My wife and I grew up in this neighborhood. This is the only house we've ever lived in.
No amount of money could replace our homes. This is where we chose to settle, and this is where we want to stay. I'm scared.
You would put working-class neighborhoods in jeopardy.
This land is everything I have. It's all I own.
Everybody, please welcome writer-director Courtney Balaker, the great David Crosby, and the great Suzette Kelo. Thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on the film. I want to talk all about the film and the making of it and the process, but Suzette, let's talk about your story a little bit. I mean, what was it like to become I would say, probably a reluctant activist, and then the sort of face of this campaign in this case, and now also your story is being made into a movie. Track that journey a little bit for us.
Well, overwhelming, and to make this, be fortunate and have Courtney turn this into a movie was, for me, I guess, the right thing to do, so the public will always know what happened to us. And what was the last part of the question?
The other part of the question was, you know, this got made into a movie. You know, what's it like to become the face of something?
Overwhelming to be the face of this. It was very overwhelming. I was fortunate enough to have Courtney and her husband do the movie, which has really brought to light, to attention of the American people, what happened to us in the Fort Trumbull neighborhood. And they did the movie from their heart, and they did a tremendous job.
Courtney, what made you interested in this story? How did you get involved in this story?
My husband and I own a film company called Courtney Productions, and soon after we founded it with the intention of making important ideas entertaining, it was brought to our attention that the book, Little Pink House, written by Jeff Benedict, which is a fantastic book, that the film rights were available. I read it. I was astounded by this story. I couldn't believe that something like this could happen, that the U.S. Supreme Court would allow it to happen. And I also couldn't believe that what she did, I mean, you know, so this was a 10-year ordeal of her life, of not knowing if her home was going to be ripped from her forever, and her neighborhood, every day she woke up. Wasn't like a few bad weeks. It was torture. And so many people I think a lot of people would have just said, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm gone. And she said, you can't have it. And she took such a principled, fearless act, completely reluctantly wanting to be activist, as you mentioned. And I was just blown away and inspired. And I said, this woman needs to be known, and what she did needs to be memorialized. And I also had to make the film, or we had to make the film, my husband and producing partner, Ted and I, because we wanted to bring awareness. This happens all over the place still. And our hope was to make sure that there is never another Suzette Kelo situation.
How difficult was it for you to adapt the story and make it accessible and understandable to an audience? Eminent domain, in a lot of ways, can be a very dense law. I mean, obviously, the story here is they're going to take their home away, but when you get into the weeds, it can be fairly dense.
Yeah, it was one of the most difficult things I had ever done. It's a tricky topic. Not many people know what it is. Usually, when it's referred to, it's in reference to public use, widening a road, building a hospital or a school. In this case, it was not used for that. It was used to take Suzette and her neighbor's property and hand it over to a developer who could build stuff like condos and in high-end facilities that would benefit Pfizer Corporation, who was on the other side of that.
But
so
the absurdity of their argument was that they were arguing that this was for public use, that raising tax revenue for the town would essentially be a public benefit for the town, and that was their argument. Yeah, potential. Yeah, it never came. Yeah, right. It still hasn't come. But even then, that argument is absurd. You're just transferring land from private owner to private owner. It's not actually going to public use.
It's completely absurd, and it was obvious that it was absurd to about 85% of Americans when the decision came out. They couldn't believe that. They couldn't believe that that is how the Supreme Court decided to define eminent domain in this particular case.
Yeah. David, how did you get involved in the film, or what made you interested?
Jeff Benedict's a friend of mine, and he sent me the book. And I read it, and I couldn't resist it. When we were standing outside in the hall, the song came on, and it hit us again, and all three of us started crying, just now, right there. It's very wrong, and she's very brave, and it shouldn't have happened. My beef is that every place that I have, and I've had to learn about this because I couldn't not learn about it, every place that this law is on the books, almost always it gets misused. It's an opportunity for somebody with greed to say, oh, let's see, that's really valuable. We could, and then I could get under the table a payoff. And they usually do. And it has been misused. As far as I'm able to tell by what little research I did, it's been misused almost every place it's ever been on the books. What happens is somebody says, hey, you take that, sell that, and I could snatch the money as it goes by. And they do it. Historically, if you study this thing, man, it's one of the most misused ideas in the legal world. And I couldn't resist it. I couldn't not try it out, and I lucked out. My son and I wrote a good song.
That's right.
But if I couldn't have written the song, I would have carried a sign. I think she's one of the bravest people I've met. I think they've made a fine film, and I'm honored to be a part of it, Fred.
Suzette, what was it like for you when you first saw the film?
Overwhelming. I mean, they really did a nice job. They depicted everything, very well. But the actual, actually being there, the heartbreak and the pain and the suffering they caused us, those words fail in comparison to what those folks really did to us in that neighborhood. They destroyed us. They destroyed our families, and they ripped our hearts out, and they killed the elderly, and it was pretty bad.
All for nothing, too, at the end of the day.
All for absolutely nothing. It's a vacant lot.
All for absolutely nothing, but for us, it's their just desert for nothing to go there. It's hallowed ground for us. Nobody wants to go there.
I'm curious, this might be a question that's a little in the weeds, but how often are these laws or these rules applied to the use of public funds for like private complexes in cities and in towns? So often we hear about tax funders paying for a company to move into a town. Is it the same laws? Do you know?
Well, I know that a number of years ago, after the decision, they had stopped federal money, like HUD money and stuff like that, going to projects to build things for where they took property for economic development. The federal government had actually put a stop to it. They would no longer give money for funding for eminent domain. And that was not long after the Supreme Court vote came down. That was, I think the vote was maybe 340 to 33 or something in favor of no money going to any more development.
Unfortunately, our current president is a fan of eminent domain. And that makes it all the more important that we stand up and say what we're saying.
Yeah. I mean, anything that's sort of bad, we could say our president is a current fan of this bad policy.
It's a big book.
It's a very, we could be talking about anything kind of evil up here and be like, president likes it. Yeah. Talk about working with Catherine Keener. She's one of our best. She's one of the greatest actresses I think we have, and you do such a wonderful job capturing, I think, the pain that she shows, Suzette's pain. So what was it like working with her?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan. I think she's a brilliant actor and artist. I'd never worked with her before. She is so committed to the work, and she takes it very seriously. And in this case, it was crucial. She responded to Suzette's story in a very powerful way. And we had a conversation the first time she read the script, and we got on the phone, and she said, she's like, I have a house that I love, and I raised my son in my house, and I understand that feeling. She called it, the roots, and we talked about this concept of when you root yourself someplace, the pain and agony of if you were to be uprooted. That was very important to her about the story and about why she connected to Suzette. So Catherine, what I also loved about Catherine is that she only chooses material that is really, really important to her. I mean, I think she's picky, and I think that's a compliment. Yeah. She really only, she's very much a curator of her own career. So I was really honored. I didn't think we'd get her. I said, why are we sending this to Catherine Keener? She'll never do it. And our casting director said, well, you have to try. And so we did, and it was just a real blessing.
Suzette, did you get the chance to meet Catherine at all? Did she talk to you about the process?
I met Catherine Keener after the film was made in Santa Barbara at the film festival. I didn't meet her before that.
And was that before or after you had seen the film that you met her?
It was after the film. It was at a film festival.
The first time they met was at the Q&A. Literally, we're walking up on stage. You were there, and I said, just so you know, this is the very first time that they were meeting. I think that was okay, and we talked a little bit about it at one point, Suzette and I. I mean, we tried to get them together, and it didn't work out logistically. But I think that it was probably good because she knew who Suzette was through the script. She knew who Suzette was from a lot of the media footage that you can find of her online. And I think she really wanted to just kind of have her own take. It wasn't an impersonation job. She wanted to really channel what she felt she understood about Suzette Kelo. And I think the meeting was actually the right time.
Now, as much as this story, I think, you can just sort of solely focus it on this particular story, it does feel like a very prescient case in terms of the Supreme Court beginning to rule more and more in favor of private corporations in this country. Did you see it that way at all?
I'm not an expert on the Supreme Court. I solely looked at this particular case, and for me, what this was an excellent example of is cronyism. When you have government making under-the-table deals with big corporations and the little guy loses, and you have politicians from both sides of the aisle saying they're going to stand up for the little guy, but oftentimes they don't. So for me, this is less about what party line do you, say you're with. It's more about insiders versus outsiders. It's about how people, I think all over the country right now, especially with this president, are starting to get really frustrated, feeling they're being pushed around all the time. They're being told what's best for them by people who aren't them. And that's not a good feeling to have. So for me, I really looked at it through the lens of really trying to expose cronyism. It still happens all the time, and the little guy loses.
The cronyism that we're seeing now is so magnified on the federal level, but with this president, there's like the hope that when we come out of the other side of this, we're going to be a little bit more aware and on top of it. But because it's so magnified right now watching it. David, how do you go about writing a song for a movie like this? Like, what's your process, you and your son?
Well, you look for a story that moves you. You look for a piece of sort of emotional truth, something that will penetrate the fog and communicate. And that was there. It is a definite, clear abuse of power. It's an awful thing what they did to Suzette. It's, and it's an ongoing problem. The reason the court did it, well, the court's been stacked. The reason we got a problem with Congress doing anything is Congress is bought. Our problem here is much deeper than this offense. It's we used to have a democracy, and now we have a corporatocracy, and this is a kind of an awful example of it. Pfizer was able to throw their weight around, and the result was that a really fine, very brave lady got crushed. And that's not okay, not in my book. So I love it when the little guys won't roll over and put their paws in the air and cry uncle. I like it when we stand up on our hind legs and say, hey, this isn't okay. I like that. I'm going to be a part of that.
Suzette, how hard was it for you to not roll over at any point during this process, this 10-year ordeal?
Well, I'm really the type of person that says I say what I mean and mean what I say. So when I said I would do this, I meant that I would do it. And so that's really what did it for me. It was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do for everybody, not just for us, me and my 6 neighbors. It was for everybody. So.
Let's get some questions from our audience. Who has a question? Right there.
I saw the movie a year ago at the Athena Film Festival, and I didn't believe that it could actually happen in the United States. And I read that it was premiered at in New London. I was wondering what the response was from the town there, and do you think that releasing this movie now will change maybe any laws going forward?
The Guard Theater in New London holds 1,400 people, and all seats were sold out yesterday for the Little Pink House. So, which was really, really nice. The response from 1,400 people was amazing for myself and my neighbors, and the support they showed. So. And I think the movie being released, when this was going on, the battle was going on, every article that was wrote, every letter to the editor, every billboard we put up, we prayed that it would end. And then when Jeff Benedict, he's the gentleman that wrote the book, when he came to me, he said, Suzette, my name is Jeff Benedict, and I'd like to write the story about your battle. And I said to him, what took you so long? Because again, we always hoped somebody would come and save us, even though we had the Institute for Justice and other people helping us. We just wanted it to end. We had the wolves at our door. We were in the corner like trapped animals in a corner trying to fight for everything we had. And I'm not kidding. So when the book was done and these people came forward and asked me to do a movie, I told them I would be happy for them to do the movie about the story. And I had just a feeling from the heart that these people were good people and they would do the right thing for us and tell the story from their heart and be able to help us and help other people to stop the battle. So I didn't get involved with anything that they did because I trusted them to do the right thing. And they did do the right thing. I just stayed back if they answered a question if I had to, and just let them make this fine production.
Next question right here.
Thank you guys so much for being here. I'm from Connecticut, and I had never even heard of this story. My question's for you, David. What do you think of activism today in the United States? I mean, obviously you are an icon of counterculture in the 60s and 70s, and now there are so many amazing young people who are standing up for things that they believe in. What do you feel the commonalities are between some of the activists that we see now, such as Emma Gonzalez, and the people that you noticed when you were growing up?
Usually, the worse things get, the more people are forced to look at it and say, I just can't sit idle and let this go on. In the United States today, you know, activism is regenerating at an astounding pace. You saw the Women's March, that gave me hope. You saw the March for Our Lives, that gave me even more hope. When I see people willing to put themselves and their lives on the line and say, you know, I can't not stand up, that's the part of humans I really like. And I think, in a way, it's healthy. I mean, I'll give you an example. When we saw Barack Obama walk out on that stage in Chicago, when he'd won, I thought, wow, the United States is starting to grow up. Things are getting better. We may have put that whole racist thing behind us. And then we get to here, and we've got a president who's an avowed, open, completely obvious racist. And he has not just encouraged people, but poured gasoline on the fire. That's not a good thing, but it is causing a reaction. People of good conscience all over this country, even in other countries who feel sympathy for us, are starting to resist. And God bless them, we really need it. This is a symptom of a deeper pain and a deeper problem. It's a rotten symptom, and it did something awful. And bless you for sticking up on it, and bless you for making a really fine film, because it did.
Bless you for writing a song for our film, because that's another thing I never thought would ever happen. And
I can't help the song stuff, but I'm thrilled, man. To me, this is activism at its best. You know, nobody here is trying to. We're not going to gain a damn thing from it. All we've seen is loss, you know. But I like the courage, and I am seeing more of it, and I hope to heck that it increases, because we need it desperately.
I think we have time for one more.
Hi, how are you? Quick question. I'm not sure if you're able to answer this, but hopefully. I was just curious if there were any repercussions for any of the politicians involved, and if there weren't, if you think or any investigations, rather, into wrongdoing, and if there will be further investigations as a result of this film.
The governor at the time went to prison, and he was there for a little while, and then he got out, and then he went to prison again for something else. Yeah. So he's getting, I think, his justice. I don't know, were there any other politicians that were penalized for any, which it just blows my mind, because the things that Suzette is referring to and David is referring to are just so absolutely egregious. And some of them are depicted in the film, many of them are not. It's a long book, over 400 pages. It's a 10-year ordeal. It's a complicated story. But that's something that, you know, it will blow your mind by how many people got away with some despicable behavior in the name of making a town a better place.
And who are now also probably using that behavior to lobby and to probably make more money and to use it as a consultancy kind of thing, right?
Oh yeah. There were you know, people that were involved in the it was called the New London Development Corporation at the time, which was this nonprofit, but it was really associated with the city, who was, you know, in charge of making sure Suzette and her neighbors got out. And you know, there are people that led that have very fine careers today, consulting on social justice and. and making the world a better place. But you know, that's what it is. It's like when people think that they can define your value. People were trying to tell Suzette and her neighbors, no, you don't know what the value of your home and property is. We do. We know something better can be built here than your homes. Trust us. That's where things get really scary in this country, when people are telling us, whether it's Trump or any politician, saying, I got this, I know what's best for you, and people are saying, no, actually, I know what's best for me. If it's not hurting anybody else, that's when things get really, really scary. And in this whole case, that was one piece of it that was just terrifying to me. And I think terrifying to a lot of people that watched it, because there were questions like she asked, was anybody punished? And the answer is one.
Right. Well, us.
Well,
the residents
were any of the bad guys punished?
Yeah, I understand that, but we were the ones that were punished.
Yeah.
And really, and just,
Pretty standard American operating procedure, though. Punish the victims and you know, let the perpetrators go. Not to be cynical, sorry.
Unfortunately, but yeah.
2 years later, in 2007, there was an even greater calamity, and you know, none of those people got really held accountable, and a lot of people lost a lot of money. It's just standard operating procedure, it seems. Guys, I love the film. Congratulations. How can people see Little Pink House?
We open in theaters this Friday, April 20th. We'll be in New York, LA, we'll be in Berkeley, Irvine, San Francisco, and Atlanta. And then after that, we're going to be in 40 cities and towns counting. You can find us at littlepinkhousemovie.com. All of our locations and theaters are listed there. If you don't see it in your town, don't worry. You can bring it to your town, and we tell you how to do that. So littlepinkhousemovie.com, but please see us in theaters this Friday, April 20th.
Everybody, please give them a round of applause. Let's hear it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.